For the last 17 years, Team Fortress 2 has been one of the juggernauts of online gaming, even becoming a cultural phenomenon. PC Gamer called it the most fun you can have online, yet despite its success, it has since fallen from glory, leaving the community with a question. Why does Valve seem to hate Team Fortress 2? We couldn't hope to answer that question without starting our story in a period we call the Golden Years. When it released in October 2007 as part of the Orange Box, the early days of Team Fortress 2 were nothing short of magical. Most of us who played during this time did so in our school or high school years, and there was nothing quite like coming home, jumping on your favorite server, and joining in the action while waiting for your friends. Competitive gaming existed at the time, but it was largely dominated by fighting and strategy games, with the bulk of competitive shooter players opting to play games like Quake or Counter-Strike. This meant that Team Fortress 2, with its fun classes, large team size and wacky attitude, was actually the perfect game for all players regardless of skill level. You could play for hours or minutes, and even if you were worse than everyone else on the server, you would still find some way to contribute to the team or end up having fun. There were only 3 game modes available at launch: Capture the Flag, Control Points, and Territorial Control. It wasn't until the Gold Rush update just 6 months after the game's initial release that Valve would add the Payload Race game mode along with the iconic Gold Rush map and something truly special, an item system and the first 3 new items, all of which could be earned by simply completing achievements. The next update came only 2 months later, featuring new items and achievements and 2 community-made maps. But let's not digress, we're not here to discuss TF2's full update history. I just want to give you a picture of what those golden years were like. Constant new content. Even back then, in 2008, Valve was adding maps made by the community, maps that are still some of its most iconic even today. They even included a link in the changelog to get players started on making their own maps. Right there since the beginning, Team Fortress 2 has always been a game that had a great amount of input from the community. So, what caused the golden years to come to an end? It wasn't the addition of hats in the Sniperverse Spy update of May 2009 at least, and it wasn't even in the introduction of the in-game cash store with the Manconomy update in April 2010, although this did turn a few heads because Team Fortress 2 was not free to play at the time. The game only went free to play in June 2011 with the Uber update and quickly exploded into popularity after it did, immediately jumping from 22 to just over 100,000 players. It wasn't entirely without issue, of course. It meant that hackers could just create new accounts if they got banned, and they wouldn't have to rebuy the game, so there would probably be a few more of those. This becomes important later in our story, so remember it for now. So, if free-to-play didn't end the golden years, then what did? Was it a lack of updates? Not at this point in time anyways. There is quite a lot of disagreement about what is and isn't considered a major update in Team Fortress 2's history. Take the first Australian Christmas update of 2010 for example. This came with a whole new melee-only game mode and map, a massive stack of hats, a smaller pile of new weapons, and everyone got their item storage capacity increased. A pretty good update overall. 2011 had a similarly large Christmas update content drop, 2012 skipped Christmas completely, and by the time we hit Christmas 2013, we were only being given cosmetics. This wasn't the end of good seasonal updates, but it is a pretty clear example that not all updates are made equal, and scrolling Team Fortress 2's update history page isn't actually a great indicator of what was being added. But I can't go too hard on Valve here, as a lot of these updates added community content from the Steam Workshop. Also, while they may not have all been content patches, one can't exactly accuse Valve of ignoring the game at that time. So if it wasn't the hats, the in-game economy, the free-to-play, or a lack of updates that did it, then what ended the golden years? Ironically, it was esports. Now, before I jump into this part, I don't mean TF2 esports, because that scene was actually thriving in the form of international LAN competitions for those who cared about playing professionally, and of course, they could set their own rules, their own weapon restrictions, and so on. It was actually the greater esports bubble that brought about the end of the golden years. As I said already, Team Fortress 2 was a perfect game for casual players. It didn't launch with any kind of matchmaking features. In fact, the closest thing it had was a button to enter Quick Play, which would just drop you into a nearby community server with a good connection and enough space. But back then, it was all about community servers. You could look through the server browser and actually pick the server you wanted to join, or rely on Quick Play to find one for you. It was a perfect system that let you join your friends, avoid servers, maps, and game modes that you didn't like, and play on the ones you did like. If the server was full, you could join a queue and go play another server while waiting in that queue. It was all Team Fortress 2 ever needed, and if things stayed that way, maybe I wouldn't be here making this video. But outside of Team Fortress 2, ranked and skill-based matchmaking was stealing the spotlight everywhere else. The year was 2016 and the scene for esports was thriving. In February, MLG announced the first Counter-Strike tournament with a $1 million prize pool. Dota 2 players, meanwhile, were practicing for the upcoming International 2016, which would later raise a prize pool of over $20 million to break the record set the previous year. On top of that, Overwatch was to release on the 24th of May, boasting class-based gameplay that hadn't been attempted since Team Fortress 2 in any case. The beta began in October the previous year and had been an absolute hit leading up to the release with nearly 10 million players. It too had a unique art style and a cast of characters with a lot of personality. Perhaps more importantly, however, it would include party and skill-based matchmaking, allowing players to play against other people of similar skill level or even compete on seasonal ranked ladders. Was Team Fortress 2 going to be left behind? Not if Valve was having any of it. On the 7th of July 2016, not even 2 full months after the release of Overwatch, Valve dropped the Meet Your Match update, and this, my friends, was the beginning of the end. You see, with this update, the quick play feature to find and join community servers was removed entirely in favor of Valve's own matchmaking, letting players create parties and find games in a casual or competitive mode and leveling up their account to be matched against players of similar skill level. Listen, this might not sound so bad. It was working for Overwatch, which had similar rounded objective-based gameplay, but these were Valve servers, and you'll recall that Team Fortress 2 was a game that was built and developed around its community. Those community servers were part of the personality that the game fostered, bringing people together based on where they wanted to be. It didn't matter back then if you had one high-skill player that was just dominating the server because Team Fortress 2 was a very casual game, and highly skilled players were a minority that basically became local legends. There was a measure of satisfaction having players of such varied skill on a server. Anyone who was interested in playing at a higher tier would do so through organized games called pickups, but with the introduction of matchmaking, it was likely most players who wanted to play at higher tiers would just opt for the competitive matchmaking option. Now, it's not like Valve took away the ability to join community servers, that was just moved into a different menu and was something most new players would never know to even touch. In the past, new players would find these community servers through the quick play button and favorite them so they could come back later. But now, people would only find these servers in the server browser if they actually went looking for them, meaning that these communities would start to grow smaller and smaller as people instead opted for Valve's own matchmaking servers. As for the competitive players, the ones that would normally be in pickups, this update was supposed to be everything they had ever hoped for. But I've left one major detail here right until the end of this segment, and that's that Valve's matchmaking was absolutely horrendous. Seriously, if my garbage had garbage, it would have been this. Queue times lasted ages, often timing out for no real good reason or just glitching out the menu. Leaving penalties were harsh, especially given that the servers might have dropped you by accident, leaving you unable to get back in. As I mentioned earlier, competitive players had rules in their games. They had weapon bans, team composition, but competitive matchmaking released with no ability to control these things. All the weapons from standard play were available, with the only real difference being that matches were forced to be 6 versus 6, random bullet spread and critical hits were turned off, and there was a limited map and game mode selection available. In short, competitive players got stiffed by a barely functional system that, even when it did work, was not what they wanted to begin with. Most of them just went back to doing professional games the way they always had. As for casual players, this new version of casual matchmaking and leveling up to replace quick play was neither needed nor desired. Instead of opening your game and jumping straight onto the server, map, and game mode that you wanted to play for as long as you wanted to play it, your new option was to join the queue. Sure, you could filter maps and game modes, but unless a lot of other players did the same, and they didn't, you would be waiting in a queue for quite some time. Casual matchmaking even launched with a penalty for people who left games. In casual! Further to that, there were many regions where matchmaking couldn't find enough players searching at the same time and just wouldn't work at all, and mine happened to be one of them. I'm not sure what Valve was thinking when they did this, but I'd venture to simply say that they weren't thinking at all, not when they launched this update at least. They did, however, open their eyes again the day after this update dropped, and when they saw the immediate dumpster fire that their game had suddenly become, they took swift action by means of a blog post apologizing for the poor launch. They said they'd be removing the leaving penalty in casual, fixing the queue times, and restoring some of the map selection. And, even though they did fix a lot of this later in the same month, high queue times would remain a problem for years to come as the matchmaking system tried to properly match players based on skill level, ping, region, and more. This update was doubtlessly the worst thing to ever happen to Team Fortress 2, marking the end of the golden years. It forever changed the community focus of the game, and it would only pave the way for bad things to come. Speaking of bad things to come, it's time to talk about the bot crisis. The Team Fortress 2 community cannot catch a break. All of this went down in July 2016. Just 1 year later, people began to spot something strange in the casual matchmaking. There were reports of players that behaved weirdly. Cheating has of course always been a problem in online games, but these players weren't just cheating, their overall behavior just didn't seem human. Someone found out how to run a script to get bots going in Team Fortress 2. This problem started small. Most players at the time probably weren't even aware that it was a problem at all. But that was just the first generation of bots. It's still not known today how they became so unstoppable. Some players theorize that it has to do with a source code leak at Valve that enabled the bots to be made in the first place. But essentially, these bots will take on offensive profile pictures and usernames, matchmake into casual servers, and spam copyright music for streamers or racial slurs over in-game voice chat. And then they'll pick the sniping class, aim at the sky, and spin around in circles as they move through the map, instantly killing anyone who enters their line of sight with a headshot aimbot. They'll also spam racial slurs in the server chat and even advertise websites that you can go to and pay money for the bots to ignore you based on your username. Strangely enough, these bots only join casual matchmaking. Valve's mobile phone linked account security stops them from entering competitive, and for some reason they just don't join community servers through the server browser. At the time at least, the problem was manageable, and players on a server would simply vote kick a bot if they spotted one. But that was back in 2017. By 2019, the problem had become a full-on invasion so bad that the game was literally unplayable. Depending on the time of day you went searching for a match through casual matchmaking, you might find a game full of nothing but bots. These bots had been upgraded and were now capable of voting as well, not just so that they couldn't get kicked, but that anyone who tried to kick them would find the bots voting and often succeeding to kick them instead. These bots often came with pre-recorded voice lines that would trigger in protest to a vote kick so that players think they're real and side with them and don't kick them. It doesn't take a genius to work out that this made playing the game through casual matchmaking utterly impossible. You can cycle through server after server on casual matchmaking even now in 2024, 6 whole years since this problem started, and still find yourself being instantly killed by a swarm of bots or simply having your ears assaulted by their all-chat music spam that's so bad, by the way, that will be instantly demonetized if I actually share game audio in this video. It was back in 2022 too that this problem had probably the most publicity it was going to get, with IGN reporting on it and Team Fortress 2 content creators banding together to create the hashtag #SaveTeamFortress2 movement, where they worked together to send a massive amount of emails to Valve asking them to fix the problem. It worked. That is to say, they got Valve's attention, and then Valve heroically stepped up to the plate and did
nothing at all. Nothing at all. Nothing at all.
Or at least it seems that way, because if they have done something about it, then they haven't exactly been public about it. Players don't seem to have forgotten though, because the hashtag #SaveTF2 movement began trending again this January in the wake of Valve forgetting about their promise to do something. The bots are allegedly appearing less frequently, but this is more likely on part of the botters themselves rather than Valve actually taking any action. So what now? Where does this leave us? Is the game dead? Has everyone gone home? Are the servers empty? Well, surprisingly not. Despite the bot crisis, the game actually beat its all-time peak player count record back in July 2023, with a lot of players coming back for what Valve hyped up as a summer update that would be more than just a regular holiday update, asking the community to submit Steam Workshop items. It was indeed larger than their regular summer update, arguably the first real update the game has had in years, adding 14 new maps and a bunch of cosmetics. This gave the community a temporary hope that things could be better. But of course, with the attention of the record-breaking player count, the botters doubled down their efforts, and even now in 2024, we've seen some major spikes in botting on European servers. This has no doubt accounted for the player numbers suddenly dropping to a low not seen since September 2019. As I said earlier, bots don't join community servers, so a decent portion of the community must be playing on those, but I suspect many others just grit their teeth and keep on searching casual matchmaking until they find a match with no bots for a few minutes. As for whether or not there is real hope for Team Fortress 2, here's my view. I started playing this game back when I was in middle school, when it released. It was the first online game that ever really captivated me, that seemed to just always be fun to play. I wanted to show it to all my friends and get them in on the action, and I largely succeeded. The lore was funny, the characters were charming, and the gameplay seemed to just beckon you to keep coming back to see what else you could do. I've gone through sessions of gameplay that had me on the edge of my seat during the tensest moments of the round, fist pump in the air after finally getting revenge on that one annoying spy, or crying with laughter after doing something funny. I even did a pyro cosplay because I liked the game so much. Don't judge. All this is to say, Team Fortress 2 is actually a good game, or more than that, it's an amazing game. That's why, despite being nearly 17 years old, it's still relevant. It's why you'll still find it consistently in Steam's top 10, or at the moment, top 20 played games. Despite everything that's happened to it, the amazing community that Team Fortress 2 was built on still lives to this day. In all honesty, I can't say I had this hope when I started making this video. I began to dive back into Team Fortress 2 after a few years' absence on account of life being busy, and I saw that nothing had changed, the bots was still there, the update well was still dry, and the game just didn't feel like it used to in the golden years. But then I turned to some of the community servers, in this particular case, servers organized and paid for by the YouTube content creator Uncle Dane. These servers appear in the regular server browser, but are also listed by region on Uncletopia, Dane's website. Within 15 minutes of joining the server, I'd totally forgotten that I was recording, and I caught myself with a massive smile plastered on my face. Sure, the game had changed a bit, but it was unmistakably the gameplay I got hooked on all those years ago. But the thing that made me the most proud wasn't even the gameplay, it was the community. I've always known that the Team Fortress 2 community is something of a silly bunch. Part of what makes this game so fun is the fact that almost everyone is specifically here to have fun, not necessarily to take the game too seriously. I didn't prompt the enemy team to do what you're seeing here. Any one of them could have opened fire, killing me and my entire team. All I did was dance, and they just joined in. I ask you, what other competitive multiplayer shooter will allow for such tomfoolery? What other community would willingly pass up the chance of easy kills and just partake in a funny temporary moment together? We went back to our typical warfare after this tribute to Conga, but the moment was stuck with me because it's not the first time this has happened. It's just that this is the only game I've seen this happen in. Even if you have no faith involved to fix this game, you can put your faith in the community instead. Back in 2023, some geniuses decided that enough was enough and they released Team Fortress 2 Classic, not to be confused with TF2's predecessor, Team Fortress Classic. As it says on their website, Team Fortress 2 Classic is a source mod that aims to reimagine the 2008 to 2009 era of Team Fortress 2. That's right folks, a whole new modded instance of the game with the intent of bringing back the golden years, complete with new maps and including weapons that Valve either scrapped or left on the drawing board. I downloaded it and gave it a go, and I'm pleased to announce that they've done a fantastic job at capturing exactly what made TF2 so special back then. If any of you have abandoned TF2 in its entirety, or if you have no community servers near you, I highly recommend you try out Team Fortress 2 Classic because I for one am pretty excited about where it's going. So, to summarize my view, there is hope, but however you look at it, that hope lies in the hands of the community, and as long as it remains alive, so will Team Fortress 2. But that brings us to the final point of this whole video. It looks pretty much like Valve does hate Team Fortress 2, like they've abandoned it to slowly decay as all things are destined to. Given that the game is nearly 17 years old, you've got to give them kudos for even keeping it alive for this long or putting in as much as they did. There are a few theories as to why Valve might hate Team Fortress 2. It's long been speculated in the community that Team Fortress 2's source code must be an absolute mess. After all, if you have a bunch of different programmers adding code to a single project over so many years, there are bound to be a few things that even Valve's best developers won't have the slightest clue how to add to TF2 without breaking everything else. To add to this, Valve is known for having an incredibly strict hiring process. They only hire the best of the best, people who are willing to make an extreme lifestyle commitment by working for Valve, but who in turn will be given a lot of freedom in their work life. Valve has made it open knowledge that the people who work for them get to choose what they work on, and even choose their working hours for the most part. Valve has published their new employee handbook you can search for if you want to check it out for yourself. The weird organizational structure they show here is why they've been able to produce the legendary games they did in the first place. But the weakness of it is that a lot of projects end up getting scrapped, hence why we haven't seen a new Valve title in such a long time, with the exception of Half-Life Alyx. Imagine if you worked at Valve and wanted to take a crack at adding to Team Fortress 2. Can you imagine the sheer gravity of the task? My guess is that there have probably been a few attempts to fix issues with Team Fortress 2. Likely, teams at Valve have taken it to the drawing board multiple times already. It wouldn't surprise me in the slightest if they've talked quite a lot about potentially porting it to Source 2 like they did for Counter-Strike and then shelved the idea again and again as other projects such as the Steam Deck, Counter-Strike or Dota took priority over and over. What I can't really understand is, if this game is generating revenue for them and has a community that clearly cares so much about it, why not fix the bot issue? Why, Valve? I've seen all the speculation that you can't fix it, but I'm not sure I'm ready to believe that. So, if Valve hates Team Fortress 2, that's probably why. It represents one of their greatest successes while at the same time being the imposing juggernaut of an elephant in the room at any given time in Valve Studios. Furthermore, I imagine that a few Valve employees likely feel the weight of the past success on their shoulders. After all, if there's one question that they're sick of hearing even more than when they'll fix Team Fortress 2, it's probably the question of when the third iteration of a certain other game is coming out. In any case, whether or not we'll see them properly support this game again, that's anyone's guess. If you learned anything in this video, or you want to see more analytical content like this, consider leaving us a like or subscribe and comment what you think we should take a closer look at next time. Otherwise, if you have some video ideas for us, or if you just want to hang out in a community of gamers, be sure to check out our Discord server and connect with the community at Realm Space Gaming. My name is Jason, thanks for watching, and don't forget to enjoy the rest of your day.